Welcome back to the Engine Performance Expo. We are coming down the stretch. A lot of great stuff still to come, including Tim Wilkerson and our final roundtable discussion. But right now we're going to have a roundtable discussion at a rectangular table, and we're going to talk a little bit about parts supply, an area where high performance, and really the whole world right now, you know, everyone remembers the beginning of the pandemic, but toilet paper, oh my gosh, what happened? Oh, yeah. But that is true in high performance as well. There's a chain, everybody has what they need, and a schedule on which that they order it. And some of that has been changed, interrupted, and so I think this discussion right now is like, what are some strategies? And Chris, let's start off with Straub Technologies. Like, how do you handle those challenges? I know everybody wants more than they're getting, but it takes a strategy and some thought to keep everybody happy right now.
Well, and I'm gonna credit John Callies on this, and just with Morel lifters and stuff. John told me years ago a story about Joe Lunati. Joe Lunati would always order 25% more cam cores from Crane than he ever knew that he would use, because the same thing happened each year. Is that about May, Crane would call Joe up and say, "Hey, we're out of this. Could you sell us this?" "Oh yeah, we've got that." And I've yet to get my stockbroker to guarantee 20% on my money. And I know anything that I've got here at the shop, I can make 20%. So she gets really mad at me when I won't send her money one month, because I said, when you can guarantee, I'm gonna make 20%. So I've always invested in inventory, having inventory on the shelf, and looking at 3 to 4 months. Now with the pandemic situation, now what I look at, I'm going 6, I'm going 8 months. I think this just in time, a lot of manufacturers have figured out that's probably not the best case scenario, but it goes back to, I guarantee none of this is vegetables. It's not going to rot. Mm-hmm. I'm going to sell that lifter at some point in time, and I'm going to make at least 20%. So look at inventory as a stock or a bond that it's guaranteed you're going to make at least 20% on. It's an investment. This is all investment. I have an inventory.
Well, the perishable part is, I think it's a really great aspect, is that most of these things don't have a shelf life.
Right.
I mean, they're still going to be around. It's going to be there. And, you know, like I said, the just-in-time thing was something, I mean, how we did it at Gibbs. We went through a whole lean manufacturing, supply, everything. Because you can tie up a ton of money doing this if you're not careful.
Yep.
But lean only works as long as all the rest of the pieces in the chain work.
Right.
There are big pieces of the chain missing right now.
Right.
We were talking about it off camera a little bit, yesterday, the big announcement about the Port of Los Angeles going to 24/7. That's a big thing, because we know that, Charles knows that he grew up out in California, and I'm out in California often going to Ronnie's place, and I've flown out of LAX and made that turn and looked down there towards Catalina, and maybe you see a ship or two. The last year and a half, it looks like the Chinese and Navy invaded.
You sent me pictures, yes. Yeah.
Last time I guess the last count was like 70 something. I sent you the one picture. I could count 52 back this summer. And of course, part of that was the COVID, things like that. But at least this week, there's some news that, okay, as opposed to just working one shift or whatever they were doing, it's now going to run 24/7.
3 shifts.
Right? Port of Los Angeles, Port of Long Beach, which is essentially 50% of the container supply coming in. And then the other news we were talking about was this is a New York Times article about the port in Savannah, which is the third largest port. Well, their issue wasn't workers, wasn't time, it was dock space, because people weren't coming to get their stuff. So truck drivers and things. So I think it's back to the thing is, just in time will work as long as the rest of the supply chain works. And right now, it's broken.
Yes, right.
And I don't think you can put a time on a calendar other than just throw a dart at it and hope you're right. Back to picking stocks again.
And again, it's created an opportunity. It's the way I look at it. You've got to take a negative and turn it into a positive. What can I take from this so that I'm in a better spot And that's what that's the way I look at it.
Well, that's
It's just
racer mentality right there, if I ever heard one. Dave, what are your thoughts?
Well, this just-in-time inventory was a great thing, as Lake has said, and Chris as well. But it's a business model that is now broken, and I've got to believe that thought process is going to go away. People are going to start investing more in inventory. The key to making all this work, though, is investing in the right inventory to have it at that future time when you do need it, which takes a lot more thinking, a lot more process, and let's face it, we're talking cubic dollars of inventory investment to make sure we don't have that supply chain interruption, regardless of where you're sourcing it. You still got to look way down that pike now, where before we became a little complacent, we became conditioned. We didn't have that in our worry process through our acquisition of acquiring everything we need A to Z to make our individual businesses work, run, and do what? Service our valued customer at the end of the day. We're all in that together. So I think a lot of change in thinking is going to happen. I think there's going to have to be investment in storage. Let's face it, right now, every square foot on the floor is dedicated to manufacturing because of that just-in-time. Without that just-in-time, now I have to rethink my square inch, my square foot. How can I utilize it? Can I go vertical? Is that going to give me storage? Horizontal, it's extremely expensive. What, $90 a foot or something like that to build in today's world. So you got to think a little bit differently, and maybe vertical is a way to go because there's a lot of air just in this ceiling right here that could become storage for those facilities.
I think part of this too is not just from the manufacturing side, but also from the racer side.
Indeed.
That there's a lot of racers. I was talking to an engine builder the other day that they had the mentality that, you know what, I can have one engine. Because if I have a problem, I can send it to my engine guy, and he may charge me a little extra to work overtime that week, but man, I can turn this thing back around, and I'm back racing again next week. That's over. Right. That is not happening right now. Right. And what some people are starting to say is that it's being recognized. Well, I need a backup motor. So now part of that stress in the supply chain, why can't you get parts? I mean, everybody's making parts. I mean, I know at Total Seal, we're making more parts than we've ever made before. So it's not that we're not making parts. I mean, we have our full staff of people. All the machines are running, things are good. But when demand goes up that much...
Which it has.
It has, because people are recognizing, hey, I need a backup motor. I need more parts on the shelf. You got to fill that supply chain. Charles, what was that analogy you came up with this morning?
Oh, it was like, I described it as like an AccuSump. So you're on the track and you lose oil pressure and dumps the oil out. Well, the AccuSump doesn't immediately fill back up. It's robbing a little bit of pressure from the oil the engine needs to slowly fill the AccuSump back up. We're in that phase right now where it's still needing to recharge the cylinder.
Yeah, all the warehouses got to be refilled. That's what it is. I mean, you come in this morning and say, that's it. That's brilliant.
That is, Stan, your thoughts?
Yeah, same. I mean, manufacturing-wise, sales are great. We, as in most places, struggling with employees. Distribution, manufacturing. We just struggle with enough people to make everything flow smoothly. So to combat that, we're looking at different types of processes to package, to pick parts, so automated machines, different machinery, and again, kind of like the AccuSump, where those investments and how to move the floor space to add that, it doesn't just happen. You have to plan, well, if we put this here, then how is that going to work? We've taken and moved some packaging, the manufacturing stage same, but we were having problems packaging parts. So we've found off locations or even third party to package the product. The product is the same, but we can't get enough people to package. So if we could move some packaging here, the people we do have could emphasize more on what they still have at the facility, and hopefully when that AccuSump is filled, we're going to have more product to distribute out. So a lot of this is rethinking, how, where, who, and being very aware of what's out there, and what we can do to service the customer better.
Well, and that's where that investment comes back through again. You know, you've got an investment in machine tools, the automation of those machine tools, more robotics, more not just 3 axis but 5 axis. Right. That's where it's got to go in today's world. But then, as you just mentioned, now we got to find that qualified person to then operate that machine. And so that puts another crunch into the equation. Chris got a lot of demand on the product that he produces here. And yes, he's got a great facility here, and he's a brilliant mind as far as the manufacturing and how to make that horsepower, but he cannot do it himself, regardless of how much automation he spends those cubic dollars on to make himself more efficient. He still needs to find that person in the equation to complete that so that he can run that shop longer than the 12, 14, 16 hours a day you're working right now?
Correct. Yes.
And so does the supply chain, right? The people that deliver that stuff need those same employees. I think maybe you said it a minute ago. It's your patriotic duty
It is.
to do something. We need to rally like it's wartime again and recognize that it takes that kind of mentality. And one thing I think I'm hearing here is that adaptability, like you're saying, Dan. You can't go with the same game plan you had before. You got to come up with a new game plan. You need to come up with it now. You need to be taking steps now, and that means on the manufacturing side, the supply chain side, but also from the consumer side. They have to start thinking differently and planning differently.
Well, again, they've been spoiled because when they wanted it, boom, they hit a button, it came.
We did our best, right? We did our best.
That button. And it's not happening.
And you got to be honest with the customer. Anymore now, the customer will call up. I'll say, until it hits my door, I do not know when the product's physically going to be here. But I can tell you what, if you order it now, we will order the product, and when it comes in, we will call you. But if you want to do something, you need to get the order down. Let's not lose, let's learn from history. Let's remember history. The Roaring 20s came out of the Spanish flu pandemic. Okay?
Right.
So it's one of the, we hear our grandparents talk about those times and stuff. That was one of the best times in the United States, the Roaring 20s, and it came after a flu pandemic.
Right.
Okay? So what we've got ahead of us right now are probably some pretty damn good years. Now, is it going to be maybe a little bit of struggle right now, and we've got to adapt to a little bit different way of how we do business? Yes. But take that opportunity, change, modify what you're doing now to kind of fit that model. But again, I don't feel bad about it. I mean, I look forward to the future, the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Well, I think the racer mentality that we've been talking about this whole time, and as someone who is just kind of observing, Scooter said, like, you race your business, right? Well, this is the same deal. Like, if your business is your race car and you have just been served up some difficult track conditions, and what are you going to do? Are you going to go out there and spin the tires and blow it off and lose the race? No. You're going to adjust the timing on your car. You're going to adjust the air pressure in your tires. You're going to do something to try to overcome that obstacle. And that's what everybody is obligated to do. It was great when you could just I need a crank, and the crank from China just shows up because it is. And, well, that might have been a good plan for that time. But that time is now over. Now we're in a different time. Right. We had great track conditions. Now we have tough track conditions. What are we going to do? Are we just going to lose the race? Or are we going to improvise, adapt, and overcome and move forward? Well, some will, and some won't.
Right.
And that's the whole race that Scooter was talking about.
You have to identify the weakest link in your operation and plan for that. So if that's a widget that you need and everything else breaks down, you have to put your effort into making sure you have supply of that widget, whether you have to find an alternate source for it, you have to make it yourself, or if it's something or if you're sourcing it, look ahead, well, I need X number of this, and I use every 6 months, I use 100 of them. Well, I need to make sure, well, the manufacturer's going to take 24 weeks to get it. Well, I need to give orders and plan ahead. It's forecasting as a manufacturer and also selling products from ARP and JE and and how long lead times are. Well, the lead times were still, the way I look at it, I tell people, you can't sell something you don't have. Right. And I never really bought into the lean operation. I mean, on average, I probably carry probably $750,000 to $1 million in inventory. But if I don't have that inventory, I can't sell it. But one thing, going back to the consumer, that the consumer needs to realize that there are these bottlenecks right now. And if they place an order with you and then they immediately cancel that order, they're not going to get it anywhere else because it's nowhere else. All they're doing is hurting the business because they don't. A lot of people don't realize when you refund that transaction, the credit card company's taking that another 3%. So you're paying both when you get the money and you're going back.
You're just making it worse.
And you're making the whole problem worse by canceling your order. So that's something that and we see it every single day. We have what particular component that we need.
Right.
It's on order. We have them on order. They are coming, but they're coming next week. Someone doesn't want. Well, I'll place an order somewhere else. Well, no one has it, but they don't realize this. It's just be patient, and also as a business owner and a supplier, just communicating and just saying, like you said, Chris, you're just communicating that we're going to do our best to deliver the right part on time, or as quickly as we can.
And a little understanding too. I know nobody likes to talk about it because it's terrible. It was a terrible thing what we went through the last year and a half, 2 years.
Right.
Like, oh my gosh, the worst. But it happened, and there was an effect, and we're all dealing with that effect.
Right.
So what's your attitude going to be? Anger? You're going to be angry at the person who can't supply the part because of what? What's the reason? Something that nobody chose. And so hopefully people will have a little understanding and plan a little further out, and everybody in that chain or connected to it, work together, like you said, almost in a wartime kind of efficiency to just get to that point.
I've seen that at Total Seal. I've seen some of our big engine builders. They're very adaptive now, where they're calling us up. Hey, I'm working on this. What do you have? As opposed to saying, give me this.
I need.
What do you have?
What do you have?
Maybe be able
Right.
to make
We'll work.
recipe.
We'll
Sure.
work. Let's work together so we can get to the end result. So I think that, again, working with your suppliers is a key thing, not just being demanding that I want this widget and I need it now. That doesn't really fly.
No.
I mean, we've already seen that attitude. It's back maybe it's that racer mentality. These guys, hey, they want to go race, they want to win. They're like, okay, what can we do? What do we have? How can we make this work? Because this is what we're trying to do. I mean, heck, let's call it like it is. This was going to be 3 days.
Yes.
But we couldn't get enough parts to complete the engine, so it's 2 days now, 2 days in January. Bonus for you guys, but it was a little bit of a heartache and headache for us, right? We were stressed out. We were like, what are we going to do? Right? But it's the reality. I mean, it's no one's immune to it. But what do? I think it ends up being a benefit because we're going to have 4 days of show now. They're going to be even more detailed. So in the end, this is going to be a benefit for the industry that we didn't do 3 days now. So you can look at it as a positive or a negative. It's your choice. But I think that mentality of being open to change and adaptability. And another thing too, I think that sometimes the higher end part that seems that actually is available is actually way cheaper now. Because if it doesn't wear out as fast, guess what? You're not having to go back to the supply chain as soon. Parts that last longer are actually of greater value now. So I think you got to look at that. What's that replaceability on that part? How long is it going to last? Needs to factor into your thought process of equation.
Well, and to touch on that, Lake, too, I will tell a customer on the phone, if you order it today, I will get it ordered, and you will get it at the price it is now. I mean, some industries are not even printing price sheets,
Right.
Because the cost of raw goods is changing weekly. So who's to say that a customer spends $400 with me this week, that part 4 months from now is not going to be $550.
Right.
Well, I mean, you just saved yourself $150 for not canceling that order, not paying the 3%. I had a gentleman call the other day. He was going to cancel his order on heads. I said, no problem. I've got no problem with it. I understand. Probably 4 hours later, same gentleman calls back. There's nobody that's got anything. And I said, I know.
Right.
I mean, I'm not. It does me. I am not sitting at my desk enjoying, I'm collecting all this money and boy, this is really great. The stress is on me because I not only have you as a customer, I've got 100 of you waiting on. You know, I would rather it go out the door and then I get a video. I love how this thing sounds with your camshaft, Chris. Okay, post it on YouTube and I'll send you a free t-shirt. But right now I can't do it. But actually now the customers right now, if they'll go ahead and order the parts, I honestly think they're going to save quite a bit of money.
Oh yeah. I mean the other day, right? We were ordering some parts for the Expo engine, And I called JC at ATI, and I'm like, hey, we need a dampener. I get it. Just however much it is, just tell me what it is. I'm going to pay for it. No worries. 3 days later, the dampener shows up. 3 days. I was shocked. I'm like, they've got stuff. Of course, they're a higher end manufacturer. They're not the cheapest dampener on the market. Probably the best dampener on the market, in my opinion it is. But they had it, and they could ship it. So that's like cool. I mean, so I think part of it is having an expectation, understanding that the most common items are probably the ones that are the most out of stock. But be adaptive, be creative. Don't be willing to pay a little bit more for the higher end part that's available, because it's probably going to last you a lot longer. I mean, I know the one we bought from them, 15 years ago, that's been on that engine at Shavers. This has got a 10,000 dyno pulls on it. It's been rebuilt once. That's the best money we ever spent.
Yeah. Well, you got to keep the emotion out of this whole acquisition equation. One thing for sure, you cannot tomorrow your customer to death. Tomorrow. That'll get old in the blink of an eye.
2 weeks is always 2 weeks.
I like your approach, Chris. You know, this is where it is today. You need to stay in line, because this is the price today. This is the approximation of what I can deal with in this reality, taking all emotion out of that equation. If not, yeah, you can come back in, but then you're going to start back over here, and you may be starting at a higher price. So we as manufacturers have to also keep that emotion out of the equation, because we don't want to be fooled by a false trend that might be happening. And then I take precious resources and I follow an emotional direction versus a good, well thought through business direction. I may invest those dollars improperly, and then I'm caught somewhere else in that whole supply acquisition effort that I'm trying to achieve through that. But worst thing you do is tomorrow your customer to death. Never, ever, ever do that, in my opinion.
It's best to under promise and over deliver.
Agreed.
So if a supplier tells you it's going to be 3 weeks, just figure Murphy's going to get
4 to 6.
4 to 6.
Yes.
And if you end up delivering it in the 3 weeks to the customer, then they're tickled to death. But if you tell them 3 weeks and it ends up being 4, they're going to be calling you every single day. Well, you told me 3 weeks.
You told me this, the same thing you're telling me again here today. We had a big interruption with abrasives last year because of exactly what we're talking about here. We went from a 3 to 5 week delivery on crankshaft and camshaft grinding wells that we service most of the grinders out here in North America. We went from a 3 to 5 week. We're looking at 8 to 12 weeks for delivery, and we know how to get ahead of the game to get that pipeline going, because there's a drawn out process to making a crankshaft or a camshaft grinding wheel. It's not they're not just throwing a bunch of glue in a mold and throwing some sand in there, get the happy press guy going. There's a whole process going. These have to bake for hours. They have to cool down, a very slow process. Balance, it's all there. So we had a huge, fortunately, the way we process the blank stock of abrasives we keep at our facility, it gave us an edge over our competition. But on the same note, we were taking cubic dollars down that pipeline to invest that I had to have these certain dimensions remachined into other dimensions in my, as you guys call it, your core pile, which would be my core pile for abrasives, so that I could have those in time for the cam grinders and the crankshaft grinders that are out there. Because if they can't grind the crank or the cam, they can't ship it to you. You guys can't put it in the engine. It can't get to the track. So that process is got to be looked at without emotion, in my opinion. You got to keep your business head on all the time through this. You don't want to chase a pipe dream in the equation.
I think what Dave's saying, looking ahead, forecasting, I mean, coming from a company that we distribute a lot, and back to I pushed a button and one part would come in tomorrow. I had the opportunity to work in our distribution center for a while and wasn't familiar with distribution. I'm a racer, right? But I learned a lot. But I also learned I worked in small parcels, and I realized that we would pick all these parts, and all these parts would come. One guy picked them, but there was 150 destinations for these parts. So you would spend hours taking this part out, putting in a box, a ship, and what works better is if the companies stock up and you do a larger order rather than I want 8 bearings or I need 8
Yeah.
piston rings, or
It
something.
takes the same amount of time to print one shipping label,
Exactly, but from a distribution,
regardless if it's one part or 100.
I like the patriotic. I think it came up. We as trying to work collectively as a country to get out of this is we need the patriots to support what we're trying to do. We're not going in trying to make a bad day for anybody. We're spend most of my time tracking parts but if somebody has to package 150 individual, or if we can go to a distribution, and as Dave's ordering a lot of parts, different businesses, but that mentality, then we can make that one parcel that's already picked through the whole facility, put in one parcel and ship it, and it makes it easier to distribute out the product that the end customer has a better chance of getting it from Dave or other distributions, rather than drop shipping each component out, because it's way more work.
Well, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something.
Exactly.
And
I think my mom told me that before.
the whole, I know this year is the 70th year of the NHRA, right? So let's just do it in the context of 70 years. That's not really that long. This whole era that we're in, oh my gosh, you can source something from China and I can order one and it'll be here in 2 weeks. Wow, that's so cool. Let's try it. Let's do it. And then people got used to that, and that's okay.
Right.
But is that the best way to do it just because we can do it? They made that option available to us? No, it's probably not. It's probably not the best way to do it. What you just described is probably the best way to do it. So maybe the novelty of that is just kind of a course that we ran and we learned, and now through our latest experience, we're probably all learning just because we could do that, it probably wasn't the best idea. And and not to bring it up, but it's something that's reality. Over the last 10 years, a lot of people have been revisiting the sourcing of everything outside of our country,
Right.
because we could. And man, yeah, it'd be so great to have people outside the country do stuff, and it won't cost a lot of money, and it'll be great. Yeah, and everything will be cheaper. Okay, just because we could do it, is it the best thing for us? And I think that's the conversation we're all having right now.
Well, it's back to JC at ATI. I mean, he's a classic example of this. During that time period, they did not go that route. Now, it made them have a higher selling price for a dampener compared to maybe other companies. But they manufacture everything in the U.S.
Yes.
in Maryland. And he told me, last year was the best year they've ever had in the history of the company. Why? Because they could ship. Just like they did for us, 2 weeks ago.
Right.
They can ship because they make it here. They control their own destiny. And I also know there's a guy sitting at this table right here that controls his own destiny because he works really hard at it. I mean, all the machines that you've added.
I learned the hard way. I used to outsource everything, and we just did sales and warehousing, and I got burned by all my eggs are in one basket. Quality issue to the supply issue. I got fired as a customer and told figure it out. And at that point, I decided in 2014, 5 years, I wanted to be master of my own destiny, have all my own manufacturing, do everything in-house, so I didn't have to rely on anybody else. And it worked out perfect. It was end of 2019, every product we could do in-house, and then COVID.
Congratulations.
COVID. Because otherwise, that I had found another supplier. Thankfully, my dad came from the aerospace industry, and they had excess manufacturing capacity, and they were more than happy to take on all my manufacturing. So it gave me 5 years to go ahead and do this. But the last shipment came from them because I had to give blanket orders going out a year to get product. And the last shipment we got was about $250,000 of product, and it was in February, right when COVID.
Oh, wow.
And a gift, and that payment was due in March.
And
That was a scary payment to make, though.
Yeah.
Because no one saw that. I mean, when we were at the PERA conference, Production Injury Builders Association, I was talking to Mark Melling. He said, no one had a crystal ball that could see what was going to happen. If they said they did, they're lying. No one saw this coming. Right. How this was going to play out. So you couldn't help it.
No, and I agree with you, and I want to wave this American flag one more time. Let's face it, I'll be the first to raise my hand. I'm a company that's I'm a profit company. I have to make a profit to be able to do what I do, to deliver the services and the quality of the product I do to my valued customers out there. I'm in it for profits. On the same note, this American flag waving, it was easy to look across to some of these other countries because they were spoiling us. They had a lesser priced product. It was of a decent or acceptable quality. We could get it in a reasonable amount of time. Pretty easy decision. Okay, everything is going smooth over here. I can go ahead and get that offshore product sent over here. I have a friend of mine who owns a fabrication shop. He goes through a lot of welding wire because he's welding steel all the time. He was buying all his welding wire from China direct, and of course the supply chain starts drying up. He was whining because I'm paying so much more for my welding wire. I said, well, where are you getting it? He goes, I have to buy it. Well, about 6 weeks after that first conversation with him, I said, how's that going? He goes, let me tell you the end result of this story. He goes, I'm getting a better quality of wire now than I was before. My welds are better. My product has now improved because of this forced march I had to make to change my supplier from over the big pond to now right here in the good old US of A. And I think other manufacturers are also going to realize, because as you said, the roaring 20s, right after World, United States of America is a manufacturing powerhouse,
yes,
pure and simple, and it needs to be that again. We need to be doing that again. And it doesn't really cost that much more to make it right here in America.
And I can't help but think of the worker, right? Like, okay, it costs more. It is going to cost more. Why? Because some American worker is getting paid, and what are they going to do with that money? What are they going to do with that money? Well, we know some of them are going to buy race cars.
Yes.
And some of them are going to put that money right back into the system.
Thank God they buy race cars.
And they're going to go back out there and they're going to buy parts and they're going to do stuff and they're going to spend it on their kids right here. And I think we did lose that, and I understand why. It was like this novel thing, an experiment that went down. But if there's anything we're mostly on the same page about, I think it is that. Like, we need to recognize that, you know what, it's okay to pay more if it's sourced here, and the money is going to end up here in the pockets of some hardworking American worker who is going to ultimately go out and spend it in an American business and hopefully at a racetrack.
Right.
Hopefully at a
Well,
racetrack.
it's back
Hopefully
to
at a
the
racetrack.
controlling your own destiny, right? We, as a country, we need to be in control of our own destiny. And manufacturing is a huge part of it. One of my favorite lines from the Ford versus Ferrari movie was when Henry Ford said, I won't quote it because they curse. Right, we'll paraphrase it, right? That they out-manufactured the Germans and the Japanese.
Yes.
Ford was just as much involved in winning the war as the soldiers were, because it was American industry that we could produce more tanks, more airplanes, and all that. So as part of that, that is the guys sitting in these seats last night. Their parents were from that greatest generation. And that's where that came from. That ethos, that work ethic, that drive, that fight was in those guys, and we're passing it along. It's not something that just dies when they die. It's just something you can pass along. And I think now's the time to grab it. I think if there's ever a time to say, hey, we got to reorient how we think and how we do it, now's the time.
Yes. You get smart now. And it may feel like a forced march, because let's face it, it is kind of a forced march here right now. If we get smart now, we can avoid maybe one of these bullets coming at us down the pike in the future. We'll be more sourced right here where we need to be sourced. Our employees will get smarter. The economy will get better. Those dollars will get reinvested back in here. We become a better and better group of people on and on. Not only just for today, but down that same pike as well.
Absolutely. And
that's where our vision's going.
Lesson learned, right? Hopefully lesson learned, and we take it forward. Gentlemen, this has been a great discussion, and I appreciate the waving of the flag. I really think that our industry, automotive, motorsports in general, like if there is an industry that is directly tied to that World War II generation, I feel like it's this industry, and we speak about it a lot, and I love to see that spirit. Hopefully you folks out there have enjoyed it as well. We still have more to come. Tim Wilkerson, we have shipped out an envoy to pick him up at the racetrack. He is coming back here. It is going to be great. We're going to speak. We'll have another roundtable discussion. But right now, speaking of like your life and your future and industry and what are you going to do to become that happy person down the road, career path. Like, what are you going to do maybe to get involved in the motorsports or high performance industry? Let's check it out.
What a day, what a day, what a day. Yeah, my brain is swollen. I've learned so much today.
They told us, don't start cars. We are not going to listen.